What's up, guys? Welcome back. Today we have the Laconico Prado, or at least I believe this is the Prado. This was an unnamed custom when it was purchased by the previous owner, who I traded it for another knife for. I've also been told it might be an FJ, but it was unnamed, and he said he believes it's the Prado. So Laconico is kind of a small custom knife maker here in the U.S., and he makes kind of these simple designs that are pretty signature to him. They're very recognizable, and I've been wanting to try one for a while. So before we get into it, I'll do a couple of size comparisons. It is a 3.3 inch blade. Here it is next to a Paramilitary 3 and a Paramilitary 2. So kind of right in between these two knives. Definitely more cutting edge than both, but these don't have great cutting edge, but this is just a good comparison, so you know what we're working with here. When I'm told knife sizes, I can't picture, I can't picture what that looks like. So I always like to have comparisons because I think that's helpful to most people. So let's look over the knife a little bit. So it is a titanium frame lock, like I said. It is running on washers. Here's Ray's little maker's mark. It has double thumb studs and a front flipper. So the front flipper is kind of difficult to use. I find that over pointer finger easier than the thumb flick with it. It also has this kind of dark tie bark texture, which looks really nice. It is slick though. Not a big fan of that slickness. The ergos are okay. It fits a hand fine here. I feel some sharp spots with it. And the blade shape is definitely the star of the show here. It's a pretty simple kind of drop point, clip point, but I think the grinds look fantastic. Ray did a really good job with those. It is in Magna Cut. I think I said that before. And has standoffs and a kind of a stamped bent pocket clip. So pretty standard all the way around. It's really utilitarian. It's simple. But its simpleness actually is part of the downfall of this knife, I think. We'll talk about that more in a minute, but let's go into the different ratings I have and the reason I gave these scores. It's going to rate pretty well on our EDC scale because it is quite utilitarian. So first off, I've got my carryability for this knife, and that's a 7. This is a really carryable knife. It is pretty slender. It's a little heavy for the size. There's no milling on the inside, but nothing crazy at all. I carry much heavier knives and it's totally fine. And the pocket clip definitely claims function over form. That being said, it would have rated higher if there was a little bit of texture under this pocket clip. The tension is great. It goes in and out of the pocket easily, but because of the smoothness of this bark texture, I felt like the retention wasn't great, as in it would slide around pretty easily. And again, that's not because of the tension on the pocket clip, but rather because the texture underneath is quite glassy feeling. So that got a 7 out of carryability. Usability, this also got a 7. It's, again, very utilitarian, a good blade shape. It's in Magna Cut, which is a fairly good steel, holds a okay edge, and it's relatively stainless. I think Magna Cut is a little bit overrated at this point, but it's fine. It's pretty deployable, so using it again is it's fine. It's better than average. I think it's just a good size and pretty diverse grips for it, and it's pretty simple and utilitarian, so it's going to rate pretty well there. So 7 on usability. And then last, it scored lower on this than I think you would expect, but for maintainability, this only got a 6. So that is technically better than average, which is a 5. But usually washer knives are going to score above average on maintainability, and that's because they don't need to be cleaned as often. And I love washer knives. I'm definitely a washer knife guy. This didn't score super high. It scored a 6 because of a few key things on the maintainability of the knife. First of all, it's a free spinning pivot, which is never a great thing. Like, just do some sort of flat spot, make it not free spinning so it's easier to take that pivot screw out. combined with that is the small hardware. So the pivot hardware is an 8, Torx 8, right? Again, not the end of the world, not super tiny, but when you're having free spinning and a smaller hardware, it's just a bad combo. It's a good way to strip out this screw. Fortunately, it is a very standard screw. I'm sure you can buy a replacement from tie connectors. The other thing that really detracted from it scoring higher with maintainability is the body screws. So the body screws are actually threaded directly into the handle, which in my book, that is a negative. The reason being, if there's ever an issue with your hardware, it's going to translate to the actual knife, right? If this body screw gets fucked up, the threads get fucked up, and you push them through, there's a good chance you're going to damage this handle. And that's bad. That detracts from the maintainability 100%. Being able to just have 2 screws and a standoff that's threaded itself is much, much better for maintainability. So why did he get a 6? Well, because it is a washer knife. So it's easier. It's going to need less cleaning, so less to maintain. So it's more maintainable, right? And also the blade shape is quite simple, easy to sharpen. So that gives us a grand total of 20. So it's actually a well-rated knife. So you should go out and buy this knife, right? Well, there's the rub. It's a super simple titanium frame lock. Very simple. And when a knife is this simple, and obviously intentionally simple, it should be refined. This knife is lacking refinement. All of the corners on this knife, except for this one, are just a hair sharp. They hurt a little bit. You reach in your pocket, you feel this corner. The detent, it's mushy, and it means it's not like gonna come out, but it's like a weird mushy, maybe a little bit of lash. Yeah, a little bit of lash. And it means with the washers, like the action is kind of weird. And because the thumb stud access isn't great, you always feel like you're contorting your hand to get it out. And honestly, like, that shouldn't happen if you're doing this intentionally simple of a knife, right? If you're going to have a really simple knife, it should be executed perfectly, especially in this price point. You can have boring knives, but they should be perfect. Or if you don't want to make a perfect knife, that's fine. I know everybody's learning, but there's a level of this that's just like, I'm going to build 90% of the knife and I'm not going to do 10% of the finishing. It's not like there's learning things like critical design errors or anything like that. It's just you didn't chamfer this edge. You attempted to do lock bar access, but you just put a little scallop in there and you called it good. But there's no, extra space in this scale, which would have taken another few seconds. There's like using simpleness to make something utilitarian, or using simpleness that ends up feeling lazy. And honestly, if you want, I love a boring titanium frame lock. I really do. But it needs to be executed really well. And this is almost executed well, but it's like the knife got 90% done and then it was sold. Like I said, I love a simple, boring titanium frame lock, but this doesn't make any sense to me, because if you want a simple, boring titanium frame lock, buy this or buy this. These have so much in common with each other. Free spinning hardware, washers, titanium frame lock. But this is super refined, and it's half the price of the Laconico. The existence of this knife, I struggle to see why you would buy it, because you'd buy it because it's simple and you're like, man, I like simple, but you get it in your hand and it feels lazy. I try not to be a hater of things, and I've also, been a hater of CRK in snobby times of my collecting life, but I do really like CRK, and there's a place for their knives, and it's the boring titanium frame lock because it's so well executed. Every edge is nice and chamfered. It feels great in the hand. The detent is exactly what it should be for a knife that you don't really flick out, but you can flick out once you break them in. There's a spot for these boring titanium frame locks, but if you're gonna do it, you have to do it really well. And this is not done really well, especially at the price point where it's almost double what you can get a brand new CRK for. So at the end of the day, this scores really well, but it's unrefined. And again, unrefined can be fine if you're doing something exciting. But when you're intentionally doing something super simple and super utilitarian boring, you gotta hit those refinement marks, especially when you're gonna charge custom knife money. With the existence of CRK out there and the other mid-tech companies that are doing incredible knives for cheaper than this, you have to offer something above that. And either it's like a really, cool design or whatever it may be, some new, I don't know. You have to offer something above that, because something this straightforward and simple has to be perfect when you're charging double what these mid-tech companies are charging. Anyways, I try not to be a hater in my videos, but handling this lacks refinement. It lacks some soul because it's so simple, and I struggle to see where it even would fit in the market as a collector. I know people do love these, but for me, this is not a knife that I will end up keeping. It doesn't make sense to me because of those things it's lacking. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. I'm usually not this negative, but I wanted to give my honest opinion. I try to be honest about these things. If you love your Ray Laconico, I'm happy for you. Carry it, use it, love it. For me, it doesn't make sense. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will catch you on the next one.